That was the thrust of this presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, you testified about the notes you took and the notes you reviewed, and you were asked about some limited questions on testing. I'm going to ask for Defendant's Exhibit 1434.
Going to do that one.
No, oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, we need, thank you, Sammy. But you were doing a fine job, Tom. I didn't mean to take it away from you. Thank you, Michelle. Dr. Hughes, is this your CV?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'm going to move the admission of Defendants 1434. You're out of completeness. They've got all the other records in here for Dr. Hughes. I'm trying to see completeness.
I understand. I'll sustain the objection.
Okay.
Next question.
Let's go to Defendants 1435, please. Now, Dr. Hughes, you've testified about the different testings that you administered, and this is one of the ones that I believe you testified to earlier, correct?
That's correct.
And this is the DSM-5?
This is the clinician-administered PTSD scale for the DSM-5.
Okay. I'm going to move the admission of 1435.
Any objection?
We object. There's a lot of other documents.
It's not the CAPS, it's the DSM-5. But she administered all these tests, Your Honor, and they can't, for completeness of record, they can't put in partials and then not have the rest of it.
Well, I mean, there was no objection to when they put theirs in. Now they're objecting to you putting.
I would say rule of completeness, Your Honor, Virginia Rule 2:106, that they can't just put a partial in and then not have the completeness of the testing in the documents.
Well, they put their test in. Now you want to put more tests in, correct?
Correct.
That's not a completeness argument. Then that's just a different test.
Well, it's also,
but what's the objection, though? That there's. Okay. All right. I'll sustain the objection.
All right, well, then we'll go for the other ones. You did the TSI. Well, before we go on to the others, let's talk about, could you please tell the jury what you administered in this DSM-5 and why this is significant?
Sustain.
Can you tell us why the DSM-5 is significant that you administered? So the DSM-5 is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Psychiatric Disorders. It's published by the American Psychiatric Association. That's where it has all the criteria and all the information for our major mental disorders like major depressive disorder or panic disorder or PTSD. What the CAPS is, the clinician administered PTSD scale, is it follows all of that criteria that's in the DSM-5 so that you can make a very accurate diagnosis.
And what, if any, diagnosis did you make as a result of this DSM-5?
Right. So not only on this, I mean, this instrument can stand alone where she meets PTSD criteria just by virtue of this instrument, pardon me, but also the other testing that I gave where she had elevated scales on PTSD measures which correspond with the DSM-5 symptoms of PTSD. So there are multiple measures that are consistent across time that she meets criteria for PTSD.
Thank you, Dr. Hughes. Now, you were also given one page of the scoring on the TSI 2 and one page with respect to the PAI. Do you recall seeing that?
It wasn't the scoring, they were the critical items on those respective tests.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask to bring up Defendant's Exhibit 1858. Which is the full PAI. And was this the actual testing and scoring?
Yes, this is the profile, the scores that are generated from the 344 questions that Ms. Heard answered on this test.
And what did you what were the results? What did you determine based on the testing of this PAI?
Well, that the results were valid and reportable. There was no evidence of exaggeration or malingering on this test, and there were significant symptoms that correspond with traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder symptomatology.
And I believe you said again that there was no elevated scores. Can you explain to the jury what you meant by that?
Objection leading.
Overruled. Go ahead.
So elevated scores are a way that we get to know where a cutoff is to say that something is clinically significant. And that follows very standard statistical principles. So when a scale is elevated, it means that we have sort of greater confidence that this individual endorsed a lot of different symptoms that make this scale relevant. And then we want to figure out why that person is having an elevated score on something like depression or anxiety. It gives us greater confidence that, this person's maybe reporting depressive symptoms like people who are depressed.
Okay. And what would constitute an elevated score?
Well, on different tests, it's different things. Certainly on the PAI, it doesn't follow linear T-scores. It's a little different statistically, so you have to look at it differently. But certainly, it's usually about a T-score of a 65, and on some it's a T-score of a 70, which is a T-score is a normative curve, is a way of allowing us to compare people's scores, comparing your scores to the normative group of scores.
And would it be at all helpful to have the entire test as opposed to a one piece of paper or one page?
Well, certainly you cannot tell the entirety of how the symptoms that Ms. Heard endorsed and the scales were elevated just by the critical items.
All right, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 1858.
Objection hearsay.
And this is the completeness, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Let's bring up 1859. And this is, you were shown one page from the TSI-2, the Trauma Symptom Inventory 2. Do you recall that?
Correct.
Okay. What is the significance of the TSI-2 exam, the full exam?
The Trauma Symptom Inventory is a test of common symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and related traumatic symptomatology. And on this score, she had, elevations in intrusive experiences, which is the intrusive component of PTSD, where thoughts or memories or feelings come into your mind when you don't want them, with accompanying distress. And then the defensive avoidance, doing many, many different things to push it down, to try not to think about it, to try not to talk about it, so that you don't get upset. And she also scored high on a scale of relational avoidance, having difficulty feeling close in relations and relationships, not only intimate relationships, but friendships as well. And that's a related trauma symptom that individuals have after having sustained an interpersonal trauma like domestic violence.
And would it be helpful to have the full exam as opposed to one page out of it?
As with anything, seeing an entire profile gives one more information.
Your Honor, I'd move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 15 for 1859.
Objection hearsay.
And I would argue the
If
completeness
we could
rule
approach
again.
for this.
Now, Dr. Hughes, you were asked you were shown a couple of finger pictures of Mr. Depp. And I believe you indicated those were shown to you, and I think you were asked if these were severe injuries, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did you have any understanding of the cause of those injuries by Mr. Depp?
I do understand that there's competing accounts of what happened, for sure.
All right. Let's bring up Defendant's Exhibit 373. Your Honor, I think this is already admitted.
I don't see it, and Jamie doesn't have it, so 373, I can mark it, but it's not admitted yet.
I think there was
Unless
a
it's-
version of that. If I may,
I don't know that.
Your Honor,
I can just tell you that 373 has not been admitted into evidence.
Your Honor, it's not redacted, and I don't believe it's been admitted.
the part I'm trying to admit is in another exhibit, so let's go it a different way. We'll take that one down. Let's go with 398.
398 redacted is in evidence.
That might be the one. All right. If you could blow that up. And I think we're looking for, you could move that up, Michelle. There we go. You could blow that one up. And this is an email from Mr. Depp to David Kipper. Your understanding was that was his doctor, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then I'm going to draw your attention to the last part of this, and this is on 3/19/2015. Thank you for everything. Figure out how to do this. I'm missing the controls on this. Thank you for everything. I've chopped off my left middle finger as a reminder that I should, thank you, Your Honor, that I should never cut off my finger again. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so that's Mr. Depp admitting that to Dr. Kipper in 3/19/2015.
Objection leading.
Okay,
I'll sustain the objection next.
okay, that's fine. I'm good with that. Let's go to Defendant's Exhibit 499. And Your Honor, I believe this one is in as well, or is it a redacted?
It's a redacted one.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
one. Thank you. And then if I could draw your attention, this is a text message from Mr. Depp to Erin Falati. We talked about her earlier on 10/31/2015. And it says, this is the second time he's held off giving me my meds by blackmailing me into seeing him. The first time I had just chopped my finger off. Do you recall seeing that as part of the documents that you reviewed?
I believe I did.
Okay, thank you. We can take that down. Now, you were also asked to listen to an audio tape, and it's plaintiff's 343. I'm going to, and do you recall listening to that audio tape at some point as part of your review?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I'm going to now pull up that same audio tape from the same date, and I believe that's June 2016. And if we could go to, and we're going to have a few different ones, so hold in there with us. We're going to start with 2 minutes 40 seconds 00, going to 2 minutes 40 seconds and 21.
knocking on the door. I don't
Because
get why
that is a
one
fucking
informs the other.
irrational and violent fucking maneuver.
How
So
does
a
one
man would
inform
want
the
to
other?
get out of that area so that he doesn't get so fucking angry that he actually does pop the fucking wife.
How does one inform the other?
Oh, man. Go home and listen to the tape.
Now, that was just before the punching, hitting that was played. Do you recall that?
Objection leading.
Well, the tape recording that you listened to was at 2:46:01 to 2:47:20, and that was 2:40 through 2:40:21. Correct?
I understand. yes.
Objection leading.
Okay. Now let's go to after that.
Overruled, go ahead.
Thank you. Now let's go to after that, 2:52:00 to 2:52:34.
Just yesterday. Because of how it's been lately. Like since Australia. And I have been on the road with you. I haven't been working. I don't know what else I could fucking do.
Since Australia, you've gone on a honeymoon. You had a great time other than the fact that you had a fight on the train.
Yeah.
Physical.
Yeah.
No, we had a fight in San Francisco. But I thought everything else was great. You're saying longer in distance from Australia.
No.
And then let's go to 3:20:00 to 3:21:37. And while they're getting that, I'll just ask you the question, Dr. Hughes, do you recall that Mr. Depp said that they had fights in the places that he listed on that audio tape?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
All right. What do you recall Mr. Depp saying about fights that they'd had on that audio tape?
Objection, no foundation.
You just listened to it.
Overruled.
Yeah. I think it was hard to hear in this one. I had listened to it previously, just acknowledging that there are fights previously.
Thank you.
On each other because as we continue
I know.
fucking bad. And baby, I told you this once. I'm scared to death. You're a fucking crime scene.
I know.
If we don't get our shit together, and that by getting our shit together, that might mean fucking A, we do this, we make it. That might mean goddamn, you know, say I've tried, done, to blue. But we've got to get our shit together as individuals and as a couple. Because I love you. And I do not want to leave you. I do not want to divorce. I do not want to get out of my life. I just want peace. If I'm the culprit, majority of the time, I will fucking do everything I can. And I will recognize when I'm fucking starting to go sideways. I will recognize it.
Do you recall listening to that part of the tape, the audio tape?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recall from that portion? Again, I know it's hard to hear, but
It's hard to hear, but what I recall from hearing that was the negotiation that the couple is trying to do and trying to say, you know, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to do better.
is it possible to turn that up anymore, or is it, I have one more? I'm just. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, my last one is 3:26:20 to 3:29:50.
Your Honor, can we approach
Okay, yes, sir?
When you're ready.
What are we going to do different in the moment when you're mad and you go fuck it and
In the
you decide all bets are off?
Moment. Well, look what I did in Australia. Look what I accomplished. I put the fucker away. I told myself every fucking day, no, he's gone. No, he's gonna fucking put him away. Put him away. And by a list of the things that I feel that fuck you over or make you feel shitty or anything like that, I fucking, when we're in the moment, I remember it. I remember what I put on my list. I remember it. And I try to bring it down notches, many notches. I'll try, if we're heightened, to say, please, I don't want you to feel this. I don't want to feel this.
I need to know what we need to do different. I need to
It's
know.
got to be done with your mind and your heart.
What do we do different if I have a problem? You
Tell
need
me.
to tell me how to tell you different if I'm hurting you. You need to let me be able to be mad. Sometimes you're going to make me mad. I'm a human. I cannot live where it's like,
Well, then it's the same thing goes for me then. You're going to have to allow me to get mad.
yes, exactly. If
Okay,
I do
but
something
you get
that makes
mad
you
and then you
mad,
start fucking yelling.
I don't have to start yelling. I think I start yelling once it gets fucking heightened. I've gotten a lot better about that. It's just only, I only start yelling when it's fucking hour 11 and we're really in it.
You're not gotten better about that. Otherwise you wouldn't have had 3 physical fights in the last month and a half.
I was talking about the yelling. But
No, but you witnessed it. You're the one that brought it up. Australia was fucking great. We just argued. Let's go back there. Let's go back there in our fucking heads and in our hearts. Let's go back there. And know on your
is
list.
the monster gone? Did you put him away? It's been so, when you get on that train, you get angry, you stay on it for so long and you won't come down, you won't talk to the person
That's
that is you.
That's not always.
It doesn't have to always be the monster, but what is it? Can you put that away? Can you remember the bigger picture? You don't want to spend your life. I've asked you this so many times in fights. You want to spend your time like this. No, you don't. But I ask you because this is something you're choosing. I'm saying to you, olive branch. And you don't take my olive branches. You made me feel humiliated for offering them. You asked me to stay in Australia. I stayed, and then you walk out on me all the time. You've got to take some olive branches from me. You've got to offer them too. You've got to be bigger than what you feel at that moment. And so do I. So do I. But if I call you on it, will you hear it? Will you call me out on it if I'm doing it?
Wait a second.
Do you remember listening to that, Dr. Hughes?
Yes, I do.
And what is your interpretation of that? What do you recall?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
She's an expert.
Overruled.
I think this is more of how this couple is trying to negotiate in the face of all of the turmoil and the violence and the abuse. I think it's important pointing out, is my recollection is that there's 2 Australias. They're talking about the honeymoon Australia, not the Australia where the incident happens. They go back, and that becomes a honeymoon time for them. And I think certainly hearing how this couple has talked about the monster and the person who comes out, as we talked about that cycle of violence where the person who, hurts her and hits her and controls her isn't the same person that she loves and she cares about and that she wants to be with.
Thank you, Dr. Hughes. Now, you also were asked about